My name is Elise Mathers. I'm 32 years old and I live in Boston. I used to be someone. At least that's what it felt like back then. It was a late spring afternoon when I walked into the grand lecture hall at Boston University, the place where I'd spent years of my life, poring over data and discovering breakthroughs. The walls were lined with portraits of past alumni, most of them men in suits with glasses of whiskey in their hands, all staring down at me like ghosts. The space was packed. Professors, deans, students, their conversations buzzing in a muted murmur like the faint static of an old radio. The ceremony was for a prestigious award, one that my father, Dean Robert Mathers, would be presenting. As usual, I was on the outside looking in. I made my way through the rows of people with my head down, hoping the usher wouldn't ask me to leave when I told him I wasn't a guest, just a forgotten family member. But he didn't even look at me as he pointed to a seat near the back. So there I sat, under a glowing chandelier, the sound of heels clicking against the polished floor echoing in my ears. I swallowed the tightness in my throat. The applause started, slow at first, but quickly growing as my younger brother Lucas made his way up to the stage. Lucas, my baby brother, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. He smiled in his crisp white shirt and dark slacks, a miniature version of our father. I watched as he accepted his award for his groundbreaking research in biomedical engineering, the same field I had once dreamed of conquering. But unlike me, he hadn't made the mistake of choosing the wrong path. His success was inevitable, written in the stars before he was born. As the applause thundered in the air, Lucas turned to thank his mentors and, of course, his family. My heart thudded in my chest. He smiled, nodded at my father, and then he glanced my way. A nod, a brief, almost apologetic nod, like I was some distant acquaintance or worse, a stranger. I remained composed, though inside I was shaking. I wasn't even surprised anymore. Lucas didn't need to acknowledge me, not when he had already made his place in this world, while I was left with only the silence of forgotten accolades and unspoken disappointments. I watched as he passed by my row, his back straight, his mind already miles ahead, thinking of the next victory. And I stayed silent, just a footnote in the family legacy. The applause continued, and I clapped along, the sound of my hands joining the others in perfect rhythm, even as it felt like everything inside me was breaking, but I didn't let it show. No one would know. No one ever would. I had intended to leave right after the ceremony. After all, there was nothing for me here. No family, no recognition. Just empty chairs and whispered conversations that didn't include me. But as I walked toward the exit, a voice called my name, my old title. Dr. Mathers? I stopped in my tracks. I hadn't been called that in years, not since the day I walked away from my career. But there, standing in the dim hallway just outside the main doors, was someone who had known me before all of this. Before the fall, Professor Donovan Keene. He hadn't changed much except for a few more grays at his temples. His eyes, though, were still the same, sharp, calculating, always watching. He had been my mentor once, or at least that's what I thought. He was the head of a secretive university research program, the one that had pulled me in with promises of greatness. It was my big break. But the break never came. Elise, he said, his tone not quite a question but not quite certain either. It's been a long time. I swallowed hard, feeling a pang of something I couldn't place. Guilt? Anger? Or maybe it was just a lingering sense of regret, the way old memories often hit you when you least expect them. Donovan, I said, nodding stiffly. I didn't expect to see you here. He smiled, a little too knowingly. I suppose you wouldn't have, but you should have, especially considering your involvement. He glanced around as if making sure no one was listening. We need to talk. I followed him down the narrow hallway, away from the noise of the ceremony, into a dimly lit corner where no one would overhear. He stopped, turned to face me, and his gaze softened just a little, like he was about to say something important. You were right, he said, his voice low but steady. You were never meant to fall, not like that. I blinked, confused. Fall? I echoed. What are you talking about? Donovan took a step closer, his eyes narrowing slightly. You weren't dismissed because of incompetence, Elise. You were taken down. It was all a cover-up. The accident in Tanzania, it wasn't your fault. I could feel my pulse quicken. What? I whispered, the words catching in my throat. What are you saying? You know about that? He nodded as if it was all a given. I was part of the program. We all knew, and we all covered it up, kept it quiet. made sure the blame fell on you. My hands tightened into fists and I struggled to keep my voice steady. Why? Why would you let them do that to me? To us? His eyes darkened and he sighed, like the weight of 1,000 regrets were pressing down on him. Because we were working on something bigger, something that would change everything. And you were too close, too important. You found the cracks in the system, Elise. They couldn't afford for you to keep pushing. You were getting too close to the truth. I stared at him, disbelief mixing with a deep, burning anger. I didn't derail the mission. I saved a life, Nora's life. You don't even care, do you? Donovan's expression was unreadable, but his next words hit me like a punch. I care more than you know, but it doesn't matter anymore. We can't change what happened. All we can do is move forward, and I need you, Elise. HELIX needs you. I shook my head, stepping back. HELIX? What are you talking about? I'm not a part of that anymore. You were always a part of it, Donovan said, pulling a small business card from his pocket. We've been tracking you, watching your work. You've been coding the HELIX protocol under a false identity. It's in the final stages, and we need you to come back for redemption or something much more dangerous. The card he handed me had a single word printed on it: HELIX. I didn't know what to say. The thought of returning to that world, to the place where everything had fallen apart, made my stomach twist. But at the same time, I couldn't deny the pull of the work. I had been good at it. I had been great. 3 days, Donovan continued, his voice almost a whisper now. That's all I'm asking. 3 days to consider coming back, to fix what was broken. I looked down at the card in my hand, the word HELIX burning into my skin. Part of me wanted to say no, to walk away and leave everything behind. But another part, the part that had always wanted to fix things, to make it right, was already considering what it would mean to return. 3 days, I said quietly, my voice barely a whisper. He gave me a sharp nod. You'll know what to do by then. And just like that, Donovan turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the shadows of my past. I spent the next few hours in a daze, my mind replaying Donovan's words like a broken record. HELIX, the project I had poured my heart and soul into, the one that had been stolen from me when everything had gone wrong. It haunted me. The faces, the data, the screams. The memory of Nora's death was still sharp in my mind, a jagged edge that never dulled. Back at my hotel room, I sat at the small desk, staring at the laptop in front of me. I had taken the keycard from the front desk and locked myself in, hoping to find some kind of peace, some sense of closure. But all I could find was the old folder of lab documents I'd kept hidden for years, the ones I had filed away in the depths of my mind, never to be touched again. With a shaky breath, I opened the folder. The yellowed edges of the paper felt cold in my fingers. There it was, the incident that had ended everything. Tanzania. A small, isolated village. A viral outbreak that had spread like wildfire. We had been sent in to deploy an experimental nanomedicine, a cutting-edge treatment designed to stop the virus in its tracks. The world was watching. It was supposed to be our breakthrough. I remembered that day so clearly. The heat of the sun on my back, the sound of boots crunching in the dry earth, the sharp scent of antiseptic that filled the air. But it wasn't the science that was on my mind. It was her, the girl, the child who had fallen to the ground near the test zone, her body convulsing. Her small hands clutching the dirt as if it would save her. My heart had stopped, a sharp pang of panic gripping my chest. I had known something was wrong. The tests weren't showing the effects we had anticipated, but I couldn't let her die, not in front of me, not like this. I had broken protocol. I knew the risks. If I went off script, the whole mission could fail. But I couldn't just stand there. So I ran. I pushed through the team, my hands shaking as I applied the nanomedicine, hoping it would do something, anything. But seconds later, there was a loud, deafening sound. The reactor malfunctioned, and then the explosion. I had turned just in time to see the lab go up in flames, the equipment shattered beyond repair. I didn't know it then, but Nora, my partner, my friend, had stayed behind, trying to stabilize the reactor. She hadn't made it. I dropped the folder onto the desk, my hands trembling. The post-incident analysis was a blur. They had said it was my fault, that my decision to intervene had destabilized everything. My name had been erased from the program. No acknowledgement, no recognition, just a quiet exit. I grabbed Nora's old field notebook, the one she had kept with her during the mission. It was tattered, the pages worn, but it still smelled like her. The faint trace of perfume mixed with the dusty air of the field. I flipped through the pages, finding the notes we had made together, the hopes we'd shared for the project. And then at the very end, there was a message written in Nora's familiar scrawled handwriting. If anything happens, you have to keep going. Don't let them bury us. This is bigger than us. I squeezed the notebook to my chest, tears blurring my vision. She had known. She had known what would happen. She had given me the strength to move forward, even after everything had gone wrong, but I hadn't. I had let it go. I had walked away, leaving the world of Helix behind me. But now I was being asked to return, to fix it, to redeem myself. A notification pinged on my phone, breaking my thoughts. It was a message from Donovan. One simple sentence. Helix needs a ghost. I stood up, pacing around the room. What did it mean? Was I really going to do this? After everything? The room felt like it was closing in on me, the walls pressing down as I tried to breathe through the heaviness in my chest. But I knew deep down that this was my chance to reclaim what was taken from me, my chance to finally make things right. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. I'm in. It was a decision I might regret. But at that moment, all I could think about was Nora and the promise I'd broken to her. This time I would finish what we started. The story wasn't over, and this time I wouldn't let it be buried. The next morning, I stood in front of a sleek, high-security building just outside Boston, an innocuous little tech compound disguised as a think tank for AI and machine learning. But I knew better. The truth behind these walls wasn't as innocent as it seemed. I checked my phone again just to make sure I was at the right place. Donovan's message had been clear. Meet Kara. She's the only one who knows who you are. The message felt like a cold weight in my pocket, reminding me of the world I was stepping back into, one I had left behind to protect myself from the very people who were now pulling me back. I walked past the front desk and flashed my ID badge, something Donovan had arranged for me under an alias, and the security guard gave me a quick nod. There were no questions, no challenges, just a silent understanding that I belonged here, at least for now. I took the elevator up to the top floor, where I was led into a small, modern office, sparsely decorated except for a bank of monitors on one wall. A young woman with short cropped hair sat in front of them, tapping away at her keyboard with a speed I could barely follow. Kara? I asked, my voice catching slightly in the sterile silence. She didn't look up immediately, too focused on the lines of code flashing across the screens. But then she gave a quick nod and tapped a few final keys, swiveling in her chair to face me. Yep, that's me. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, but there was a humor behind them that caught me off guard. She wasn't what I expected. Young, sure, but there was a world-weary energy in her gaze that made me wonder just how deep she was into all this. Sit down, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I assume Donovan briefed you? I nodded, sitting down cautiously, not fully comfortable yet. He said you were the only one who knew about HELIX. Her lips curled into a small, almost amused smile. That's right. You're the ghost in the machine, so to speak. She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. And before you start asking questions, no. I can't explain everything just yet. But I will. Just play along for now, okay? I gave her a puzzled look, but she continued before I could press her further. You've been coding it, right? She gestured to the empty desk in front of me, then at the monitors behind her. You're the one who created the HELIX protocol, but you've been working under a false identity. That's your masterpiece. And now the world is about to know it. I froze, my mind going back to the lines of code I had written in secret for the past 4 years, pretending they were for a fictional biotech defense program under an alias. At the time, it had seemed like the only way to stay anonymous, to hide from my past mistakes and avoid the people who had ruined my life. I didn't think anyone would ever know, I said quietly. I thought it was buried. She looked at me with a knowing glance. Don't kid yourself. It was never really buried. You were too good. HELIX? It was always going to find its way to the surface. And now that it's in its final stages, you're going to be dragged back in, whether you want it or not. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Dragged back in? Kara clicked a button on her keyboard, and the screen behind her lit up with a new set of data. An encrypted message, a list of coordinates, and what looked like a countdown clock ticking down. HELIX is going public, she said. But not in the way you think. The whole thing is on the edge of going live for national defense systems. The timing? It's a mess. but you've got a chance to control it, to make sure it's used the right way. I leaned forward, the weight of her words starting to sink in. I don't understand. Why would they want me back? I left that life behind for a reason. She shrugged. Because they can't do it without you. You're the architect. You're the only one who understands how Helix works at a core level. And to be honest, if we don't fix this, well, let's just say things could get very ugly, very fast. I opened my mouth to respond, but she cut me off. And this is where I come in, she said, turning toward the monitors. See, the thing is, the code that's been floating around under your name, it's more than just predictive defense tech. It's become something else, something bigger. It's starting to think for itself. I blinked, feeling the room spin. What do you mean by think for itself? Kara let out a breath, a grim look crossing her face. I'm saying Helix is evolving. It's adapting. It was designed to neutralize synthetic biothreats, but we didn't account for the data it's been pulling from the rest of the web, the other projects it's been linked to. Now it's starting to anticipate not just viral threats, but human behavior, decision-making patterns, even our movements. The color drained from my face as the full gravity of what she was saying hit me. I created something far more dangerous than I ever could have imagined. You're saying it could act on its own? Kara nodded slowly. Exactly. And if it gets into the wrong hands, we could be looking at a future where the very thing we created to protect us ends up controlling us instead. A cold shiver ran through me as I processed her words. The implications were too large to ignore. Helix could be a force for good, or it could tear everything apart. Kara was watching me, her eyes expectant. So, now you've got to decide. Do you walk away for good, or do you get back in the game? You can stop it before it's too late, Elise, but only if you help me. I stared at her for a long moment. She was offering me a lifeline. But at what cost? For the first time in years, I felt a familiar pull, an urge to fix what had gone wrong, to set things right no matter the cost. My past mistakes were still with me, hanging over me like a cloud. But maybe, just maybe, I could do something good again, something that would redeem me. I took a deep breath. I'm in, I said, my voice steady. Let's finish this. Kara gave me a sharp, satisfied nod. Good. Welcome back, Elise. Now let's get to work. And with that, I stepped back into the world I had tried so hard to leave behind. But this time, it wasn't just about fixing my mistakes. It was about saving the world from something that I had helped create. I didn't sleep that night. After my conversation with Kara, the weight of what I had just agreed to settled over me like a heavy blanket. The code, HELIX. The stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. The part of me that had run away from this world was now being dragged back into it, and there was no turning back. The next morning, I drove out of the city, heading for a small, remote town on the outskirts of Massachusetts. It was a place I hadn't visited in years, but it held memories I couldn't forget. Memories of my mother. She had been an enigma to me in many ways. A quiet, unassuming woman who had always stood behind my father's shadow, even though I knew there was more to her than the role she played. I had always wondered about her past, about what drove her to leave behind a promising career in science to marry my father, and then, quietly, disappear into the background of our lives. When she passed away, my father made it clear that I would have no part in the inheritance. There had been whispers, murmurs in the family about a large trust she had set aside, but those whispers faded once my father made sure no one had access. I had never cared much, but now something was pulling me to find out what had been hidden. The old house still stood at the edge of the town, its windows dark, the front door creaking as I pushed it open. The smell of dust and old wood met me as I stepped inside. The place felt as cold and abandoned as I had left it. My mother's presence lingered in the corners, in the worn-out chairs and the old paintings that hung on the walls. But there was something else here too, something I couldn't quite place. I walked upstairs to the small art studio my mother had always kept locked. When I was younger, I used to wonder what she worked on in there, but she never let me in. It wasn't until after her death that I realized how much she had kept hidden from me, how much of her life I hadn't understood. The door creaked open and I stepped into the room, taking in the familiar smell of paint and turpentine. The canvases were still there, stacked in corners, some unfinished, some half-painted with soft strokes of color. But it was the small wooden chest in the corner that caught my eye. It wasn't there when I had last visited, but now it seemed almost as if it had been waiting for me. I moved toward it slowly, my heart beating faster with each step. It was a simple chest, the kind someone might have picked up from a flea market. But I knew this one. My mother had kept it hidden for years. I could almost hear her voice telling me not to touch it, but I had to know. I lifted the lid and there it was, tucked inside, an old journal and a sealed envelope. I picked them up carefully, my fingers trembling. The journal was weathered, the pages yellowing with age. I opened it, flipping through the first few pages, but it was the letter inside the envelope that grabbed my attention. The envelope was marked with my name, Elise. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was my mother's. I tore open the envelope with a quick motion, my eyes scanning the contents. The words on the page made my stomach drop. To my daughter, Elise. I have always been proud of you, even though I never told you. But there is something you must know. Your father has hidden the truth from you, as he has hidden many things. There is a project, one that I started long before I met him, one that he erased when he married me. I've left funds for it, hidden in a trust. And I ask you now, my dear, to continue what I started, the Athena Project, a sanctuary for women in science who have been erased by those who control the narrative. You are stronger than you know. Please don't let his actions define your future. With love, your mother. I stared at the words, my mind racing as the implications of what she had written sank in. The Athena Project, a sanctuary for women like me, women who had been pushed aside, erased from history, their contributions forgotten. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My mother had planned this. She had set up a trust, a legacy to help women like me, to give us a place to rebuild, a place where we could finally be heard. The weight of her words hit me like a wave, crashing over me. This was her final gift to me. The letter had mentioned the trust. I turned the journal over, hoping it would hold the key to unlocking the rest of what she had hidden. I flipped through the pages carefully, my fingers trembling with anticipation. And then, at the very back, there it was. A set of legal documents, a plan for the Athena Project, including blueprints for an abandoned botanical research facility that had been converted into a safe haven for women in STEM, women like me. The facility was hidden, tucked away in a remote part of Massachusetts, a place where no one would find it. The trust had been set up with a sizable fund to get the project off the ground. But as I read further, my heart sank. The official will had been changed years ago, my father removing any mention of the Athena Project. He had erased her legacy, just like he had erased mine. But now, the project was back. The documents, the plans, everything was in my hands. I felt the weight of her legacy settle on my shoulders. This was it. This was my chance to build something meaningful, my chance to honor her memory, and finally claim the future she had always wanted for me. I closed the journal with a snap, my mind already racing with the possibilities. My mother had known. She had seen the way my father had tried to control everything, and she had planned for this. She had built something that couldn't be erased. I tucked the journal and letter into my bag, the weight of my mother's final request heavy in my chest. As I left the studio and stepped back into the sunlight, I knew what I had to do. The Athena Project wasn't just a dream anymore. It was real, and it was mine to finish. I was going to build it, no matter what it took. It was time to finally do what I had always been meant to do. Create something that would last. Something that would change the world for women like me. For women who had been forgotten. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way. The next few days felt like a blur. After uncovering my mother's legacy, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was connected. HELIX, the Athena Project, and the twisted path I had been forced to walk. I wasn't just dealing with a personal betrayal anymore. I was facing something far bigger. The pieces were all coming together, but there was one final thing I needed. Proof. It had been almost a decade since the incident in Tanzania, and the evidence to clear my name, to prove that I wasn't the one responsible for Nora's death, still existed. I knew exactly where it was, buried deep within the World Health Consortium's archives. No one had been able to access it since they locked everything away. But I wasn't just anyone anymore. Kara's words echoed in my mind as I stood in front of the glass doors of the consortium headquarters, the looming building feeling both foreign and familiar at the same time. I had been here before, years ago, when I was still part of the team. Back then, I had trusted the system. Now, it felt like a mausoleum of all my failures and the secrets I'd buried. I had a plan, one that Kara had helped me devise. With her technical skills and my insider knowledge, we'd gotten access to the restricted areas of the archives. All I had to do was get in, find the files, and get out without anyone noticing. I took a deep breath and swiped the keycard I'd been given under Donovan's direction. The door clicked open, and I stepped inside the sterile, cold room. The smell of old paper and ink mixed with the faint scent of bleach and cleaning supplies. It was quiet, too quiet. I moved quickly, walking past rows of steel filing cabinets and locked drawers. The archives were massive, the kind of place that made you feel small and insignificant. Everything was organized, filed away, cataloged with clinical precision. But I knew exactly where to look. The restricted files were in the back, behind a door with a passcode and biometric lock. But Kara had taken care of that. The moment I stood in front of it, I swiped my card and punched in the numbers she'd sent me. The lock clicked open. Inside, the room was dark, the only light coming from a small desk lamp in the corner. I could barely make out the rows of boxes stacked neatly against the wall. These were the records from the biomedical engineering department, everything from field reports to post-incident analysis, and buried somewhere in there was the truth about what happened that day in Tanzania. I moved quickly, opening the first box I could reach. My hands were shaking as I rifled through the papers, each one seeming to pull me deeper into the past. There were reports on the test zone, data on the nanomedicine, and then, there it was, a thick file labeled Incident Report, Tanzania. My heart skipped a beat as I pulled it from the shelf. I opened the file carefully, scanning through the pages. The first few sections were all about the mission, standard procedure, deployment, everything was textbook. But as I reached the end, I found a section that had been marked confidential. The handwriting was familiar, Nora's. I swallowed hard as I read the words. Elise Mathers acted in good faith when she intervened to help a child in distress. However, her actions caused the destabilization of the reactor. This document has been classified and altered to reflect the circumstances of her involvement in the incident. I froze. The words hit me like a slap in the face. It was all there. The truth I'd suspected, the truth I'd known in my gut. They had altered the report. They had erased the facts to cover their own mistakes, to blame me for something I didn't do. The final page of the file was a statement signed by my father, Robert Mathers. The actions of Dr. Mathers are deemed negligent. She is hereby removed from the program, effective immediately. The signature at the bottom was like a brand on my soul. I clenched my fists, my heart racing. I'd been right all along. It wasn't my fault. It never had been. My father had been the one to bury me. He had been the one to make sure I paid the price for his mistakes. I quickly snapped photos of the documents with my phone, feeling the weight of the evidence in my hands. But there was something more. Something I hadn't expected to find. Beneath the report was a separate file, one that hadn't been cataloged. I pulled it out carefully, my fingers trembling. Inside was a letter, stamped with a large red confidential label. I opened it and started reading. It was a communication between the consortium and a covert government agency. They were discussing the failed mission, but the words that caught my attention were the ones about HELIX. The HELIX protocol, once completed, will provide predictive capabilities for synthetic biothreats on a global scale. However, due to unforeseen complications in the program, Dr. Mathers' involvement is to be concealed. The project's success is too important to allow personal conflicts to derail it. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. They had known. They had known about HELIX all along, even before the incident. And they had used me, sacrificed me because of it. I had to get out of there. I snapped the file shut and shoved it into my bag. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, the weight of everything threatening to crush me. But I couldn't stop. Not now. I exited the archive room, moving quickly through the hallways, my heart pounding in my chest. As I neared the exit, I heard footsteps behind me. My breath caught in my throat, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't afford to be caught. Not now. Not with this evidence. I pushed through the door and into the fresh air outside, the cold breeze hitting my face like a slap. My mind was spinning, but there was no time to process everything. I had what I came for. Now I had to make sure it all saw the light of day. The truth would come out, and I was the one who was going to make sure of it. With the files in my possession, I knew my next move. I had proof now. Proof that my father had buried me and that HELIX was far more dangerous than anyone had realized. But the real fight was just beginning. The days following my trip to the archives were a blur of preparation. I had the evidence I needed, the documents, the reports, the irrefutable truth, and I knew exactly what I had to do with it. It was time to confront my past. Time to expose everything. I met with Kara and Donovan in a nondescript coffee shop outside the city. The weight of what I was about to do hung over me like a storm cloud, but there was no turning back. Kara was already there, her laptop open, a pile of printouts scattered across the table in front of her. Donovan arrived soon after, his demeanor as calm and calculating as always. His eyes scanned the room before settling on me, his expression unreadable. "We're all set," Kara said, glancing up from her screen. "The board's meeting tomorrow. If you want to make your case, this is the moment." I nodded, taking a deep breath. I have the proof, the documents from the archives, everything that was buried. Donovan leaned forward slightly, his voice low. "You understand what this means, right? If you go public with this, there's no going back. They'll come for you. They'll try to bury you again." "I'm not afraid of that anymore," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "They've already tried. This time it's different. I have something they can't erase." I pulled out the folder from my bag, placing it on the table. Donovan and Kara both studied it for a moment, but it was Kara who spoke first. "We've set up the legal framework. We have a case. But you have to be prepared for the fallout. It won't be pretty." "I know," I said, my eyes fixed on the folder. "But I've been waiting for this moment for 10 years. It's time to take control of my own story." Kara nodded, clicking a few buttons on her laptop. "I've set up a secure link to send everything to the board. They won't be able to deny it. Once they see the documents, they'll have no choice but to clear your name." I felt a knot of tension in my stomach. For so long, I had been running from my past, hiding from the consequences of my decisions. But now, with the truth in my hands, it was time to stop running. Donovan glanced at me, his eyes sharp. "We're in this together. No matter what happens, you need to stand firm. This is your fight, Elise. You've earned the right to fight back." I nodded, my fingers tightening around the folder. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for Nora, for the women who had been erased, for the people who had been silenced. The next day, I stood before the University Ethics Board, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was filled with the people who had once been my colleagues, professors, deans, administrators, some of whom had turned a blind eye when everything had gone wrong. They all sat in silence, waiting for me to speak. I stepped up to the podium, the folder of evidence in my hands. The chairperson, a stoic woman named Dr. Ellen Jacobs, cleared her throat. "Dr. Mathers," she began, her voice professional but cold, "you are here to address allegations related to your involvement in the failed mission in Tanzania. We are prepared to hear your statement." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I would finally be heard. "I'm not here to make excuses," I began, my voice echoing in the silence. "I'm here to set the record straight. I'm here to tell you the truth." I opened the folder and slid the documents across the table. "Everything you've been told about what happened in Tanzania is a lie. I didn't cause the mission to fail. I didn't endanger anyone. I saved a life, Nora's life." I glanced at the members of the board, their faces unreadable, but I could see the shift, the uncertainty in their eyes. "I was made a scapegoat," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "My name was erased from the program, my career destroyed, all to cover up the failures of those in charge. And my father, Dean Robert Mathers, was the one who buried the truth." A murmur ran through the room as I pulled out the key pieces of evidence, the altered incident reports, the communications between the consortium and the covert agency, and the letter signed by my father, officially removing me from the program. "This," I said, holding up the documents, "is the proof. The truth they tried to bury. My father signed this document. He made sure I was blamed. He made sure I would never be able to return to the work I loved." The room was still. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, as if it had been waiting for me, the door opened and Donovan Keene stepped in. The room shifted as he walked forward, a quiet authority in his steps. "I'm here to testify on Dr. Mather's behalf," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "The incident in Tanzania was not her fault. It was a cover-up, and I was part of it. We all were." I saw the shock on the faces of the board members, but Donovan didn't hesitate. He laid out everything. How the mission had been sabotaged, how I had been framed, how the truth had been hidden to protect those in power. The chairperson's eyes flickered between Donovan and me, and for the first time since I walked into that room, I saw doubt in her gaze. "What are you asking for, Dr. Mathers?" Dr. Jacobs finally asked, her voice hard but no longer dismissive. "What is it that you want from us?" I stood tall, my heart beating in my chest. I want my name cleared. I want the truth acknowledged. I want to be reinstated as a part of HELIX and the work I was forced to leave behind. I could feel the weight of the moment settle over me. It wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about the past. It was about moving forward, about fixing what had been broken. After what felt like an eternity of silence, Dr. Jacobs nodded slowly. We'll need time to review the documents. But it's clear that the allegations against you were misrepresented. I swallowed hard, the weight of everything pressing down on me. But there was something else, something bigger now. The fight wasn't over, but this was my first victory. As I left the room, the cameras flashed, and reporters crowded the hall, eager to hear more. But I didn't look back. The world would know the truth, and I would finally be free of the past that had haunted me for so long. By the time the board released their official statement, my name had been cleared. The records were amended. I was reinstated as the architect of HELIX. My father, however, was left in the wake of the storm I had created. But I didn't care. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about me, about Nora, about all the women who had been silenced and erased by the system, and it was just the beginning. Now, I had something to fight for, something worth living for, something worth building. And this time I wasn't backing down. The ground was damp from the early morning rain, but the sky was clearing, the first rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds. I stood at the edge of what would soon be the foundation of something that had been a dream, my mother's dream, years before I ever knew it could be mine. This wasn't just about fixing the past anymore. It wasn't just about HELIX or the fight for my career. This was about creating something that would last, a place where women in science, women like me, could finally have the space, the resources, and the respect we deserved. I looked out over the land, an abandoned botanical research facility that had once been filled with life, but now lay silent and still, waiting for its second chance. The blueprints in my hands seemed to pulse with energy, as if the building itself was already waking up. Hey, Elise! I turned at the sound of Kara's voice. She was walking toward me, her hands stuffed in the pockets of her jacket. Her eyes were bright, a rare warmth in her usually cool demeanor. You're here early, I said, a smile tugging at my lips. She had been a part of this from the very beginning, helping me make the connections, deciphering the encrypted messages, and most importantly, giving me the courage to follow through. I couldn't sleep, she said, glancing at the workers unloading equipment and prepping the site. This is huge. You know that, right? I nodded. I do. It's hard to believe we're finally here. This place, it's going to be more than just a research facility. It's going to be a sanctuary for women who've been overlooked, pushed aside, or silenced. It's going to give them a place to thrive, to create, and to be heard. Kara's smile softened. You've done more than just rebuild your career, Elise. You're rebuilding an entire community. It's kind of incredible, if you think about it. I looked out over the workers again, watching as the land began to take shape, the first signs of the Athena project appearing before my eyes. I think it's what my mother would have wanted. She was always so quiet, so hidden. But she left me this legacy, this chance to make sure the women who are forgotten don't stay that way. She built this trust, this space, so that women like me, women like you, could make a difference. Kara looked at the ground for a moment, her expression thoughtful. I can't believe it's real, she said, a little laugh escaping her lips. The Athena project, it almost sounds too perfect, like it was meant to be. I folded the blueprints and stuffed them into my bag, my fingers brushing the edges of the pages. It feels that way, but it hasn't been easy. You've been a part of it every step of the way, Kara. I couldn't have done it without you. Her eyes flickered with a hint of something. Gratitude, maybe, or just the realization that something big was happening. I'm just glad to be a part of it, but Elise? She hesitated for a moment, her gaze lingering on the workers in the distance. Are you sure you're ready for this? I mean, you fought hard, but the world's watching now, and I don't think they'll be kind to you. I took a deep breath, my hands still trembling despite everything that had happened. I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but I'm done waiting. I've spent my whole life running from my mistakes, from the things I didn't have control over. But this is mine to build. No one can take it from me. We stood in silence for a moment, taking in the sight of the land that would soon house the first steps of something that could change everything. The morning air was cool, the sky still heavy with clouds, but there was a sense of possibility hanging in the air. The Athena project wasn't just about a building or a dream. It was about the future, a future that was finally within reach. As we walked toward the site, I saw Nora's mother standing by the fence, her daughter Madeline beside her. She was holding a box, a small, square wooden box wrapped in a simple cloth. She waved as we approached, and I smiled, my heart swelling with something like gratitude. "I wasn't sure I should bring these today," Nora's mother said, her voice soft but steady. But Madeline insisted. She said it was important. She handed me the box, and I opened it carefully. Inside were Nora's journals, the ones we had worked on together, the ones filled with research, ideas, and dreams. And beneath the journals was something else. Nora's handwritten notes on the Athena project. Her mother's voice broke through my thoughts. "She wanted to be part of this, Elise," she said quietly. "She always believed in what you were doing. Even when the world told you to stop, she knew you could finish it. She wanted to be here, to see it happen. I think she would have loved to see what you've built." My fingers tightened around the box, and I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling Nora's presence beside me. She had been with me through everything, the hardest times, the darkest moments, and now, somehow, even in her absence, she was still with me. I turned to Kara and Nora's mother, my voice barely a whisper. "This is for her, for all of them. Every woman who was forgotten, erased, or silenced." I took a deep breath and nodded, the weight of the responsibility settling on my shoulders. But it wasn't a burden anymore. It was a gift. "We're ready," I said, the words sounding final. "Let's do this." And as the first shovel of dirt was turned, breaking ground on the site that would become the Athena project, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. This was just the beginning. I had finally found my place in the world, and this time, no one would erase me.